story starts with this guy named Brian. So Brian is a typical college graduate who started his career very hungry and very eager to make a name for himself. And he was in the sales department, so essentially his role with the company was to bring on new high-paying clients into the company. But there was one problem. In his first 6 months on the job, Brian hadn't made a sale yet. While he was given some leeway, given he was young and early in his career, his time was running up. See, if he didn't make a sale by the end of his 6th month with the company, well, then he was gonna get fired. Not only would that be detrimental to his career so early on, but also to the young man's confidence. And so with about 2 weeks left in that 6 month that he had to really save his job, he had 2 meetings left to run for potential clients to ultimately make a sale and save his job. And so the night before that second to last meeting, he was in the office late in the conference room, really just working on his presentation, perfecting every little piece of it to make sure he was ready to nail that presentation the next day. And so as he was there, another member of the company, Chase, actually a senior rep on the sales team with Brian, noticed him in the office and in the conference room pretty late, so came over just to inquire what he was doing there. And so when Chase entered the conference room, Brian shared with him his situation, everything that was going on, and really just told him, look, I just want to perfect, the sequencing of the words, the presentation, and as well as the slides too, so I can really just nail this tomorrow and save my career. Chase just looked at the young guy, Brian, and said, if you're trying to make this perfect, then you're never going to leave the office. And after that, Chase walked out. Brian, not really knowing what Chase meant with his words, just continued on as he was. And so the next day, when he went to that prospective client's office to give the presentation, Brian nailed the presentation. Every single word was in line, right when he meant it to be, following the slides of his presentation, and he perfected it. Truly, he did. And when the presentation ended, the CEO of his prospective client, sitting across the room from him, just looked up at him and said, "This is a great presentation, Brian. One could almost say perfect. But what's really in it for us?" Brian, having rehearsed the response to this that he had learned in training, knew exactly what to say, and again, nailed a perfect response to that question. The CEO, once Brian was finished, looked side to side at his partners, looked up at Brian and said, "We'll be in touch." Brian knew exactly what that meant because he had heard that many of times before. They weren't going to be in touch, and he had lost that sale. He left their office hanging his head and went back to his own office. When he got there, he ran into Chase again, and Chase looked at him and said, "How'd it go today?" Brian, with distress and confusion in his voice, shared with Chase exactly what had happened. And Chase, with a little bit more wisdom, being a little more senior in the job, had an idea. And so he looked at Brian and said, "Hey man, why don't you come with me tomorrow and sit in on my meeting that I'm going to be running?" Brian was taken aback, but leaped at the opportunity. See, he knew that not only was Chase more senior than him, but Chase was also one of the top performing reps in the entire company. He knew that he would learn a little something to perfect his presentation by sitting in on one of Chase's meetings. So the following day, he took advantage of that opportunity. Brian was sitting in the back of the room as Chase gave his presentation. And as Chase was giving his presentation, Brian, the young guy, got actually a little bit nervous for Chase. See, Chase wasn't following a script. He wasn't even sharing all the information that the clients would be receiving from joining Brian and Chase's company. And to top it all off, he didn't even have any slides to go with his presentation. But before Chase was even done with his presentation, before he had even asked for the sale from the prospective client, the CEO of that prospective client looked at Chase and said, "Hey, when can we start?" At that point, Brian's mind was blown. The client asked to buy from Chase. So naturally, after Chase had closed the sale and the two of them were headed back to their office, Brian just looked at him and said, "What happened?" Chase laughed in his wisdom and just kind of looked at Brian and said, "People are not perfect. So trying to present ourselves and our company as such is simply lying to them. Rather than try to make things perfect, it's far less stressful to simply be ourselves, keep the presentation simple, and just give them what they need to hear. Also, it's a lot more profitable that way." Brian really didn't know what to make of Chase's words, but he had the weekend to really sit on it. That following Monday was his final presentation, his final opportunity to save his job. Figuring he had nothing to lose, he decided to ditch his presentation and follow Chase's lead by simply just being himself. And you know what? For the first time all year, Brian closed the sale. Later that day, when Brian ran into Chase in the office, Chase looked at him and asked, "How'd it go?" And then Brian responded, "It worked." And then Chase asked, "Was it perfect?" Brian's response was, "Not even close." See, it's common for us to want to make our work perfect, to want to obsess over every single detail, every single word, from the camera we use to the words to the message that we're delivering, but perfect is not a standard. So if we're striving to make things perfect, then we're just gonna drive ourselves mad because it's unattainable. I know this because I used to be like this as well. I've learned a few things about how to just get rid of this perfection syndrome. And there's two real ways that I have found that effectively get us beyond it. And the first is one that I coined myself, and it's called imperfect action. See, the reason why imperfect action is an antidote to this perfection syndrome is because imperfect action forces us to take action despite the fact that we know our actions or our work is not perfect. Now, the secondary thing to that is what Carol Dweck coined in her book Mindset, a growth mindset. See, what a growth mindset essentially is it's focusing on growing and improving with each and every step which we take towards achieving success, our dreams, or whatever it may be. By taking imperfect action and following it with a growth mindset by improving with each and every action we take, we will inevitably create progress towards our dreams. With constant progress towards our dreams will eventually become a reality. So if you have a dream that you're trying to achieve right now, start with taking one imperfect action. Whether it's a phone call, an email, a DM, a video, whatever it is, take that action. Once you've taken it, take a step back and think about what's one thing you could do to improve upon that action. And then before you're done, schedule the next time you're gonna take that action. Whether it's tomorrow or a week or whatever it's gonna be, schedule it, because that is what is gonna commit you to taking that action, and that is the only way in which you will start to create momentum and that progress towards creating our dreams. So if you have a dream right now, start by taking one imperfect action. It may feel uncomfortable, it may feel weird, but start. And if you know somebody who suffers from this perfection syndrome, share this video with them, because it just may be exactly what they need to get started